A Passion for Mushrooms by Chrononautical. Chapter 34. The Wedding. Perhaps spilling gold all over the floor of the Hall of Kings had been incidental during the great fight with Smaug, but during the year Erebor had been settled, the fact had become a lauded feature. It was always everyone's favorite place for a dance and the natural choice for a big ceremony. Dressed for a wedding, it was absolutely incredible. Colorful banners and tapestries swirled around the great stone columns, and even the enormous statues of kings from the past were dressed in bright silks for the occasion. All the dwarves of Erebor and many of the men from Dale were gathered wearing their finest clothes. Even a few elves of Mirkwood had come, and Bilbo thought he recognized their prince among the little band. The company that had traveled so far together and seen the first blush of Fili and Tariel's love formed an honor guard for the happy couple. Once again Bilbo was dressed in mithril with Thing at his side, and this time he wore a crown of flowers colorful enough for any wedding. Tariel wore flowers too, and much like Bilbo's in their fashion. Her dress was sewn with emerald leaves wrought upon silver branches. Beads in her hair sparkled with rubies and sapphires in the shape of pansies and spring beauties. Upon her brow there rested a mithril circlet more subdued than Bilbo's own, which crowned her gloriously in little white blossoms, like stars made of shimmering diamonds. If anything, Fili was more colorful than his bride. His clothing was the deep blue of Durin's folk, embroidered with diamonds and sapphires and a dwarvish pattern for good luck. He wore a circlet as well of mithril and blue, and Bilbo thought he looked very princely in it. The rainbow of color was not obvious until one looked at his usually messy hair. His dark locks had been braided into submission very carefully, with beads of every precious stone to be found beneath the mountain neatly woven into every single crossing of hair. Indeed, the young couple shone very sweetly together as they held hands and marched across the golden floor. Bilbo was proud to march with them, armed and armored in the dwarvish fashion, as they approached Fili's family at the front of the hall. Thorin stood there, with Dis to his left and Fili to his right. They, too, were dressed in their best. All of them wore ceremonial armor shining in the light like gold with bright crowns of heavy jewels. Dis's hair had been braided almost as elaborately as Fili's, and with nearly as many gemstones. Fili had added a cape to his armor, which seemed to change color whenever the light shifted, as though some clever dwarf had woven a rainbow into silk. Only Thorin appeared to be in his usual colors of gold, silver, and sapphires. Bilbo was rather guiltily aware that the king had dressed with more haste and less care than he might have in other circumstances. Still, he looked very well. They all looked quite spectacular in point of fact. Fili winked at his brother. "Uncle," Fili said after a nervous beat, "I bring before you the love of my heart, Tariel of the Woodland Realm, and I tell you now that all that I have is hers. My body, my honor, and my treasure are hers. I would give her my family as well. Will you welcome her, or must we go from your halls and find another place to be together?" Turning regally to the bride, the king said, "Is this your wish also, Tariel of the Woodland Realm, to become a member of my house and take a place in my line?" The elf's voice rang out clearly and without hesitation. "I come before you with the love of my heart, Fili of the Lonely Mountain, and I tell you now that all that is his I share. His perils, his triumphs, and his burdens I will bear as well. I would join our families together. If you will not welcome me, then I will go with him alone to begin anew a family of our own."
"Then I welcome you, Tariel, as my nephew's wife. As you require, so shall I provide. Shelter from evil, help in need, and advice when you falter. From this moment onward, you are of Durin's folk. Bear yourself with honor."
Bilbo had been given to understand that this simple exchange of vows was all that was required for a dwarven wedding to take place. Once Thorin welcomed Tariel into the family, the ceremony ought to have concluded. However, it seemed that he blinked, and suddenly Prince Legolas was standing on the dais next to Fili. A soft murmur rippled through the crowd as the dwarves wondered what mischief the elven prince would make. "Have you nothing to ask of me, Tariel? Or have we been friends alone in these 500 years since your parents were lost?" Looking at the bride, Bilbo was astounded to see tears filling her eyes. She had always seemed so self-sufficient, happy enough to be completely alone as long as she had a blade in her hand. Suddenly the hobbit understood why she loved Kili so fiercely, and why she sought out even the company of a gentle hobbit and a human woman when others turned away. "Legolas," she said, and laughed a little, sending the tears down her cheeks. Then she shook her head and stood up straight. "Brother, I bring before you the love of my heart, Kili of the Lonely Mountain, and I tell you now that all I have is his. My body, my honor, and my treasure are his. I would give him my family as well. Will you welcome him, or shall we never go to your halls to be greeted as kin?"
Smiling, the prince turned to the groom. "Is this your wish also, Kili of the Lonely Mountain, to join hand and hearth to my sister, taking a place in our home?"
Grinning incandescently, Kili squeezed Tariel's hand.
"I come before you with the love of my heart, Taliel of the Woodland Realm, and I tell you now that all that is hers I share. Her perils, her triumphs, and her burdens I will bear as well. I would join our families together. If you will not welcome me, then I will go with her alone to begin anew a family of our own." "Then I welcome you, Kili, as my sister's husband. As you require, so shall I provide. Shelter from evil, help in need, and advice when you falter. From this moment onward, you are elf friend and kin. Bear yourself with honor." Then the wedding really was over, and a great cheer filled the hall. A band struck up, casks were opened, and dwarves spread out to begin dancing and making merry. Kili practically tripped over himself, rushing forward to shake Legolas's hand. "Brother!" he cried, and it seemed suddenly that shaking hands was not nearly enough. He threw his arms around the elven prince, lifting him from the ground. Bilbo was no expert on elvish expressions, but it seemed to him that Legolas was not wholly comfortable with this amount of embrace. "Tariel has always been so circumspect about her lack of family. I knew she had no blood relations, but I suspected she must have some kin close to her heart. Oh, I will bring honor to your house, I swear it. A wedding is only half a wedding, as there is only one family to do the welcoming. A drink for my new brother!" Then nothing would do, but he rushed off to fetch Legolas a glass of the best wine himself. Smiling fondly after him, Tariel turned to the prince. "I do thank you for coming. As he says, dwarvish tradition calls for a meeting of families at a wedding, and I felt a born bride indeed, with no kin to take my part." Legolas frowned slightly. "Father should have come. It was he who took you in when your parents were lost to our people. One day he will amend his thinking, and see that you are yet the same Tariel you have always been. But sadly I could not convince him to make this that day." "Then, for my part, I thank you for your failure," Thorin said, placing a hand on the elven prince's shoulder and passing him the wine-glass from Kili's hand. "I owe Tariel a great debt, and much more than that still will I do to see my youngest nephew happy, but I do not think I could yet join my family to Thranduil's. You, however, are not your father, and perhaps that is more evidenced by the fact that you are here when he is not. Be welcomed in my home, brother of my niece." After that, there was a great flurry for everyone to congratulate the new couple. Bilbo watched as elves, dwarves, and men swirled past. There was dancing, eating, and drinking, but the hobbit found a place to sit and had a cup of ginger tea. More than once, Thorin suggested they go, but Baggins was as stubborn as any dwarf. It was worth the wait. Leah wheeled out the cake with the help of a few others, looking resplendent in a golden purple gown herself. The cake, however, looked perfect. Marzipan decorations took the many tears on a long journey up through a great forest, until one sprang from the leaves and followed bright blue butterflies into the night sky to dance among the stars. Bilbo had heard the tale of the fire moon from Tariel, and so he'd hung one on the cake larger than life. Then he'd set a little marzipan elf and a little marzipan dwarf to dance in its light upon the sugar frosting at the top of the massive dessert. "Oh, Bilbo, it is beautiful!" Kili cried. "I did not realize wedding cakes were crafted with such artistry among your people." "Beautiful!" Fili echoed, looking positively dumbstruck. "Well," the hobbit said modestly, "I have done a little more baking than most, and Tariel gave me the idea for marzipan when she said that she liked honey." "And since I am no dwarf," the bride murmured, "perhaps I can thank you for your gift to us on our wedding day." Bilbo blushed. "Is it that obvious? Oh dear, only a wedding without any presents is terribly bad form, you know." Kili and Tariel laughed together. "We will not tell," Kili promised. "Thank you for sharing your hobbit luck with us, for you are the luckiest fellow I know. If even a grain of your fortune passes to us, we shall be happy for all of our days." "Well then,"
the hobbit said, cutting them a generous slice of cake.
"There can be no better fortune for the new couple than to share a dessert plate, that all your future days shall have their full measure of sweetness. Nice dress."
Fili said, and Bilbo realized he had not so much been staring at the cake as he had been eyeing the hobbit's innocent apprentice.
"Oh, thank you, your majesty,"
Leah said, bobbing a curtsy.
"Master Baggins gifted it to me some time ago. I believe he wishes for me to learn self-confidence, but in truth there has been no occasion grand enough for me to wear it until today."
Fili nodded, but did not say anything else, so Leah turned back to start serving the cake. When his outstretched fist brushed against the sleeve of her dress, she looked up in surprise. Then she tentatively put her hand out to receive what Fili offered her. Sensing trouble, Bilbo pushed past Fili to see what Leah had been given. The ring was made of gold and shaped like a raven of Erebor, with sweeping wings meant to curl around a dwarven finger. In its beak was a great sapphire, and one visible eye was a smaller ruby, yet it was not the gems which stood out. Upon its back the raven carried a great feast of mushrooms and meat, and all the small dishes that were good to eat. To Bilbo's eye, untrained though it might be in the way of dwarven art, it looked like a promise that none would ever go hungry in the lonely mountain. That was a much sweeter message than expected, and so the hobbit did not bluster at Fili as he had intended.
"It is...
Leah took a deep breath.
This is a very beautiful ring, your majesty. I suppose you only wanted to show it to me."
Fili opened his mouth and then closed it again. Fili came over and punched his brother hard in the kidney. The staring dwarf did not even spare his younger brother a glance.
"I made it. For you. With my hand. A gift. Made. At the forge. For you. A gift."
The usually eloquent prince stammered. Blushing deeply, Leah put the ring on her finger.
"Thank you very much,"
she said softly.
"I will wear it with pride, my prince."
"Starlight in the sapphire," Fili said quickly. "It's not useless. Speak glim, and it will glow. Heat the ruby, too. Depress it and turn it to the left, saying Baraz, and the ring will grow hot enough to boil water, though only for an hour or so. It will need a full day to charge between uses, too. I tried to shorten the resetting period, but working runes into such a small jewel is a fearsome challenge. Yet it had to be a ring for your hand, because your hands are..."
Fili punched his brother again.
"She's already wearing it."
"Oh!" Fili looked quite dumbfounded to realize that this was indeed the case.
"I'll put it to good use,"
Leah promised, though she was still quite red beneath her beard. She looked up at Fili and smiled.
"Dance!" the hapless prince suggested. "Do you? With me, I mean? I have seen you before. Dancing, that is."
"I would love to dance,"
Leah said firmly, taking him by the hand and leading him off to the dance floor. Fili had the good grace to wait until the pair were actually dancing before he fell all over himself laughing. Shaking her head, Tadiel scolded him.
"It is no crime to be nervous about initiating a courtship. You should be kinder to your brother."
"But it is Fili. I have never seen him so afraid in all my life, and of Leah, who always looks at him like some work of art too precious to be touched until he manages to make her laugh." "Tell me I was not so clumsy in giving my courting gifts to you,"
Thorin said, coming over to Bilbo and wrapping an arm around the hobbit's waist. Leaning into him for support, Bilbo said,
"You were not. Then what trouble might have been saved if you were. I have never seen a more clearly besotted dwarf in all my days." "Then you do not spend nearly enough time gazing into my eyes, Amraline."
Bilbo supposed that this was true, so he leaned back to enjoy the soft look and the gentle color of forget-me-nots.
Fili seemed very eager to explain that his gift was useful as well as beautiful, yet that does not seem to be a general rule for courting gifts as far as I can tell. "No, but you and your apprentice are very alike."
Thorin smiled wryly.
"I suspect my aunt learned something from my example, however poor it might have been."
"What do you mean?" Lifting one hand to trace the flowers of his crown, Bilbo admitted,
"I love your gift to me far more than I would ever have thought I could love jewel and metals, but I would not call it useful." "Yet the flowers of Erebor are not what you treasure most among the things that I have given you,"
Thorin said, tucking a curly lock of hair back behind the point of Bilbo's ear. It took the hobbit a long moment to realize what he meant.
"My mushroom mine." "The one thing you could never refuse,"
the king agreed, smiling warmly. Bilbo laughed. But that was not a courting gift.
No, but if I had found a way to make it so, it might have been you and I marrying today and not only my nephew.
Never fear, the hobbit said, for we shall have our turn soon enough, and in the meantime we can have wedding cake and mushroom omelets for breakfast, when my stomach is settled enough to enjoy them properly.
Ah, mushrooms for breakfast.
The king concurred happily.
There is nothing in the world that a hobbit loves more than that, and so I have kept you at my side. Never have I been more grateful for the blessings of the Lonely Mountain.
Perhaps there is one thing I love more, Bilbo said quietly.
Perhaps.
Thorin agreed more seriously, bending down for a kiss. End of A Passion for Mushrooms by Chrononautical. If you enjoyed this recording or the content, feel free to leave a comment below or a review at the original story from the link in the descriptions. Thank you for listening.